Hi everyone, my name is Ashley and welcome to Debunk'd, the show where we analyze American culture and trace its roots back to the beginning. In this episode, we will be examining the phenomenon of Chinese restaurants in America. I took 4 guests to different Chinese restaurants throughout the state of Virginia. I was kind enough to exchange my presence for them answering one question: what makes a Chinese restaurant authentic? So I'll be exploring their answers throughout the episode, but first, let's meet the restaurants as well as my guests. Restaurant 1, Golden China. I visited Golden China in Harrisonburg, Virginia with my sister Laura for lunch. Golden China is a buffet and it's always busy, but somehow we never have to wait for a seat. The front door is painted red and it opens into a foyer with a water installation with fake fish, a claw machine, and a golden chandelier. The walls are decorated with giant fans, Chinese art, and Chinese characters. The bar, now a sushi buffet, is covered by a structure reminiscent of eaves on traditional Chinese architecture. The entire restaurant is wood paneled up to the middle of the wall, and the top half is covered in a light floral wallpaper, except for the top half of the wall behind the buffet, which is covered in red carpet and adorned with a neon sign saying Golden China that's framed by 2 gold and green dragons. It feels like time has never touched the decor of this restaurant. One half of the buffet has hot foods, including egg drop soup, General Tso's chicken, fried rice, and crab rangoons. The other half of the bar contains cold food like pudding, orange slices, and peel and eat shrimp. There's also a sushi station, despite sushi being a Japanese cuisine. I always get green beans, crab rangoons, rice, and coconut shrimp, and I always have to ask for chopsticks. They don't give them to you there. For this meal, I also ordered hot tea. After the meal, we were offered fortune cookies. Mine reads, "Education is the movement from darkness to light." So, back to the question, what makes a Chinese restaurant authentic? So, according to my sister, if the food is well seasoned, that's an indicator to her that the Chinese food is authentic. So, for example, Chinese food in our local mall isn't seasoned as richly as what she compared to what we eat at Golden China. She also said that if the employees are Chinese, then it's probably authentic. Now, in terms of my ratings, taste is a 9 out of 10. The crab rangoons there are still the absolute best I've ever had. They're amazing. In terms of authenticity, I'm gonna rate it a 3 out of 10. It's decorated like a stereotypical Chinese restaurant, and it serves mostly Americanized Chinese food like General Tso's chicken. Restaurant 2, Peter Chang in Richmond. I visited Peter Chang with my friend Cameron on a chilly Monday night for dinner. This iteration of Chef Peter Chang's restaurant chain opened on June 3rd, 2016 in Scott's Addition. His website describes him as a highly awarded and a world-class chef, as well as the greatest Chinese chef cooking in America. In 2018, the restaurant was awarded an ELBY, which is a culinary award created by Richmond Magazine in 2012 for Best Global Dining Experience. The entryway to the restaurant was decorated with articles lauding Peter Chang's talents, including a New Yorker article titled "Where's Chang?" by Calvin Trillin. Inside, the walls are donned with more of his accolades, including his ELBY Award and his James Beard Award nomination poster. The main dining room of the restaurant has booths and tables, and the wall is covered in red paint with gold, glittery Chinese cloud motifs. Each end of the wall is marked by a giant Chinese opera mask. Modern red lanterns hung over the tables. I ordered hot tea, which came in a heavy stone pot. I clearly thought I was going to drop it. For dinner, I ordered duck in hot stone pot with white rice. Cameron ordered crispy pork belly. We were given chopsticks with our meal. We both had leftovers that we took home, but unfortunately I forgot to put mine in the fridge, so I missed out on half of a great meal. So, back to the question, what makes a Chinese restaurant authentic? According to my friend Cameron, the biggest indicator for her is the menu. If there's a lot of American food items, then it's not as authentic. The decor is also an indicator of authenticity. It's more about what isn't there versus what is there. So for example, if there's like a lucky cat statue or a Buddha statue, that doesn't feel authentic to Cameron. Now for my ratings, the taste was a 10 out of 10. It was so delicious. I wish I hadn't forgotten to put it in the fridge because I would have eaten it again. In terms of authenticity, I'm gonna give it maybe a 6 out of 10. The food felt very authentic, but all of the workers I interacted with were white, so it kind of felt like a whitewashed Chinese restaurant. So the creator is Chinese and he's making Chinese dishes, but the way it's actually presented to me is very white. Restaurant 3, Yanqing in Henrico. I visited Yanqing with my fiance Eli on a Wednesday night for dinner. We entered the restaurant through a circular archway which opened up to their front door. The interior of the restaurant was decorated with white and cream paint with blue accents. There were columns and arches that lined each section of the restaurant, giving it a Greek or Roman feel. The different seating areas were separated by glass etched with bamboo, lilies, reeds, and clouds. The foyer has a still life of Chinese takeout, porcelain, and decorations. Beside it is a painting of birds and plants with Chinese characters. The opposite wall has a framed article titled The Great Taste of China. Yanqing hasn't lost its careful touch with standard Chinese favorites. A pull quote from the article reads, "With more than 100 items on the menu, the restaurants offer everything from the lowly egg roll to the elaborately prepared Peking duck." Unfortunately, I could find no record of this article online. In the center of the restaurant was a tiled area with a small fountain. The area was uplit by 3 lights in the pool, which illuminated many potted ferns and trees, as well as an elaborate wood sculpture of peacocks and bamboo. The pool was filled with coins from visitors who wanted to make a wish. I wonder how much money they make from that every year. The section we were seated in was filled with booths and a few tables. The ceiling was draped in curtains, and each table had 2 fresh red carnations. The menu was thick, like it was a folio or something. The first page addressed the reader. "Dear guest, the dishes you will find on the following pages represent a sampling from the vast culinary repertoire of 6 major regions of China. Often larger than entire countries on the European continent, these regions have distinctive and highly individualistic cuisines. The differences in these cuisines result from the particular ingredients indigenous to each region, special cooking methods employed, and above all, the different characteristics of climate, landscape, and of the people themselves." The page then goes on to explain the cuisines of the Hunan, Sichuan, Peking, Canton, and Shanghai region. The menu contains 7 pages of food options, including American gourmet cuisine. I got hot tea to drink while Eli ordered sake, which is actually a Japanese rice wine. We ordered steamed Peking dumplings and crab rangoons for our appetizers. With our appetizers, we were given dumpling sauce, sweet and sour sauce, and spicy mustard. I ordered 5 taste shrimp almost out of panic because I forgot to think about what I wanted to order, and a side of white rice. Eli ordered sesame, chicken, and fried rice. Both the appetizers and my entree came out on a bed of iceberg lettuce, I assume for presentation reasons. Eli's chicken came out on a bed of something that we literally could not identify. It almost had the same texture as like styrofoam. For dessert, we ordered Chinese donuts, which were small and round fried dough rolled in pink sugar. After dinner, we were given fortune cookies. Mine read, "Be cautious while walking in darkness alone." Hopefully this is just a piece of advice and not some sort of indicator about something. So what makes a Chinese restaurant authentic? According to Eli, if the menu has dishes that he's never heard of or he doesn't recognize, that makes it more authentic. He's aware of the fact that he eats mostly Americanized Chinese food, so therefore if it's not something that he's ever eaten, he would consider it authentic. In terms of my ratings, the taste, I would maybe give a 3 out of 10. I personally did not like my entree. Everything else was good, but like nothing was great. Nothing was seasoned that richly. In terms of authenticity, I give this place a 4 out of 10. While the authenticity factor is about the same level as Golden China, the page at the beginning of the menu explaining Chinese regions and cuisine pushed it up to a 4 out of 10 as opposed to a 3 out of 10. Restaurant 4, Full Key in Henrico. I visited Full Key with my friend Meriwether on a Sunday for lunch, and it was poppin'. We waited about 30 minutes to be seated. The entryway had a small shrine with burnt incense, fake candles, and a gold-framed image of Chinese characters. Beside the shrine were 2 elephant stools, intricately decorated with inlay and featuring a variety of scenes. Over the doorway was a sign featuring 2 cartoon tigers holding red envelopes. According to Google Translate, it reads Year of the Tiger. The interior of the restaurant is wood paneled on the bottom half of the wall. In the main dining area, the walls are painted blue and a reddish orange. There's framed relief artwork on the walls, including an image of a clipper ship. The doorway to the bathroom is hung with a beaded curtain displaying 2 pandas. The bar holds glasses and liquors, as well as soy sauce and lucky cat statues. There was a hot meat display with different fowl and sausages. Behind the checkout counter is another shrine with a figure and 2 fake candles, a calendar, family photos, and a large black and gold sign with Chinese characters. Google Translate could not for the life of it figure out what it meant. As we picked items from the carts, the ladies manning them would take our piece of paper and mark the price of each dish that we got. I only regret not trying the shark fin dumplings. We were also offered chicken feet, but I fear that would be a textural issue for me. I'm not even sure what half of the dishes were that we ate, despite picking up a dim sum menu on the way out. They just came to our table. I said, yeah, that looks good, and they gave it to me. From what I do remember and can identify, we had sesame balls, green beans, pork dumplings, shumai, and sticky rice. We paid at the counter. My waitress giggled a little when I asked for a to-go box, but technically I had paid for each plate, so I wasn't going to leave that behind. So again, I asked Meriwether what makes a Chinese restaurant authentic. She said it's mostly about patrons. If there are Chinese people eating there, the Chinese restaurant is authentic. She also said if there's like family members of the restaurant owners running around or working, like kids doing homework, playing on an iPad, something like that. Now, my ratings, the food was a 10 out of 10. It was absolutely delicious. I wanted to stuff myself further, but I literally couldn't because I had stuff I had to do later that day. And I took it all home with me. Half the time, like I said, I didn't know exactly what I was eating because I wasn't super familiar with the dishes. And instead of there being a menu that we picked off of, we just picked from the carts that were coming around. But normally, even though I wouldn't like not knowing exactly what I was eating, my brain's kind of accepted it here. In terms of authenticity, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. The personal touches to the restaurant, like religious shrines and pictures of family members visiting from China, made it feel like I was interacting with a Chinese American family in their day-to-day life. Also, there were so many Chinese people eating there that, it felt authentic. So I've spent all this time talking about, which restaurants are authentic, but we're gonna do a little debunking. Is any of the Chinese food in America authentic? To answer this question, we're going to be using Andrew Ko's book, Chop Suey, A Cultural History of Chinese Food in the United States, specifically Chapter 4, Chinese Gardens on Gold Mountain, and Chapter 6, American Chop Suey, as well as a New Yorker article by Macy Halford in which she interviews Andrew Ko. Chinese restaurants have become a part of the American landscape no matter how small or large the city you live in. While Richmond has no official Chinatown, we do have many Chinese restaurants in the city and the surrounding counties. When the New Yorker article I mentioned was published in 2009, there were over 40,000 Chinese restaurants in the United States. According to Ko, Chinese immigrants first came to the West Coast in 1849 and they fed the American West. They opened restaurants and operated chuck wagons that served traditional American cuisine to cater to American tastes. Some restaurants were decorated in Chinese decor and were staffed by Chinese people, but they served both Chinese and Western dishes. Restaurant owners modified their Chinese menus to better serve their American customers, like eliminating the savory options from a dim sum menu in favor of sweeter treats to be served with hot tea. Ko writes that Chinese restaurateurs made sure nothing was served that would shock Western palates. In post-gold rush San Francisco, white Americans were only frequenting cheap Chinese eateries that served Western food. Ko believes that the cultural shift in Americans finally accepting and seeking out Chinese food began in New York Chinatown around the 1880s. So with more American patrons, Chinese food began to become Americanized, like the birth of chop suey. Chop suey is essentially equivalent to our modern day idea of stir fry. It was a mix of foods, vegetables, meat, and then it was covered in a brown or Chinese sauce as it was marketed. Ko says that it was an everyday staple in big cities and workers would flock to Chinatown to eat at cheap Chinese restaurants during their lunch break, for example. Chop suey was featured in popular women's magazines and cookbooks. American women even went so far as to host authentic Chinese luncheons, teas, and dinners per the guidelines in these magazines and cookbooks. As Chinese food began to pervade American culture, it changed and evolved based on its context. While more expensive and upscale Chinese restaurants still serve traditional cuisine, the typical Americanized Chinese restaurants serve staples that we still eat today. Chop suey, chow mein, egg foo young, yak gu mein, fried rice, and egg rolls. These are the Chinese restaurants that became an everyday occurrence in our lives to the point where we no longer think of Chinese restaurants as a symbol of the city or cosmopolitanism. They're everywhere. So here we've reached the debunk. Odds are your favorite Chinese restaurant serves American Chinese food, not authentic Chinese. But wait, you thought we were done? Now it's time to debunk the debunk. Debunk inception, if I may. I present you with a new question. Why are we so obsessed with authenticity? For this section of the video, we're going to rely on Dean McCannell's chapter Staged Authenticity, Kartik Naram's article No Place Like Home, and Nancy Liang's article Racial Capitalism. So according to McCannell, as society has progressed and modernized, we've seen a trend towards fascination with the real life of other people. McCannell posits that this fascination is due to humanity having to perform in order to exist, which is a side effect of modernity. So I agree with McCannell, but I also think there's an added layer, especially when we're talking about being a tourist or interacting with people different from us. And I think that can be best explained by Nancy Liang's theory of racial capitalism. So according to Liang, America has a long tradition of assigning value to race. Racial capitalism is the process of deriving social or economic value from the racial identity of another person. We enjoy places like Chinese restaurants because they're seen as foreign, they're seen as otherworldly, even if we never leave our city. And simultaneously, we feel cosmopolitan and worldly because we're venturing into a foreign cuisine. McCannell also believes that we see restaurants no longer as purely places to eat. They are areas of performance, both for customers and restaurant employees. For example, I rarely eat with chopsticks when I'm at home, but every time I go to a Chinese restaurant, I ask for chopsticks or I use them if they're given to me. I am performing worldliness by being able to use chopsticks, while the restaurant is performing cultural and culinary authenticity by serving Chinese food in a Chinese appearing restaurant. So why does the Chinese restaurant indulge its audience? I want to remind you of what Cameron included when she answered her question about authenticity. She mentioned that many Chinese restaurants have the lucky cat figurine, the one with its little hand like this. Sometimes it moves. This cat is actually from Japan, but it is featured in many Chinese restaurants, even Full Key, which I rated as the most authentic restaurant. Why would a Chinese restaurant include decorations that are not authentic if they themselves are authentic? It is because we, as the tourist, are taking part in a racial capitalist system. The Chinese identity is at the greater mercy of the market, according to Liang. They are indulging us as an audience and creating a false back. If we see certain cultural markers, we assume we are getting an authentic and legitimate experience. We're more likely to go back, we're more likely to recommend it, we're more likely to keep spending our money there. Now I want to turn the lens back on myself, metaphorically. Why am I so obsessed with finding an authentic restaurant or an authentic experience? Why am I so obsessed with passing when I enter a tourist space? I recently went to Iceland and my favorite moment was passing as an Icelandic person in a bookstore. I mean, I had an entire conversation in Icelandic. Mind you, it was like maybe 4 lines of dialogue, but I passed and I was really excited. Who am I to say that because American Chinese restaurants serve Americanized food, they're not authentic? Or that because American Chinese restaurants have a Japanese cat figure, they're not authentic? Just because the experience would seem foreign to someone from mainland China doesn't mean they're not authentic to a Chinese American restaurant owner. I'm gonna leave you with these questions, and you can consider that next time you visit a Chinese restaurant or take a trip. Thanks for watching Debunked.